I'm Danny Flexen. Welcome to the latest edition of Seconds Out Flex Expectations. I'm here every Thursday, 4:30 PM, to look ahead to the boxing action of the weekend. And this week I'm going to be focusing on the Matchroom show from Sheffield, which isn't easy for me to say. And Kid Galahad, IBF featherweight champion, is in the main event, making his first defence of the title he won vacant against Jazza Dickens in a very impressive performance in their rematch, it has to be said. And Kid Galahad kind of brings to mind, and this is going to be the focus of today's vlog, a former stablemate of his, Junior Witter, and his reign as WBC super lightweight champion. Not just because they were both kind of mentored by Brendan Ingle and then latterly Dominic Ingle, and worked out of the same gym. I'm sure they've sparred rounds together. I'm sure they've spent many days, tough days in the gym in Winkerbank together as well. But more just because of the way they went about their trade and the way they finally made it to the mountaintop. So I'm sure most people watching this will know all about Junior Witter already. He was linked for much of his career with Ricky Hatton. It was kind of one of the great domestic world level fights that never occurred. Even when they were both world champions. Witter had an awkward, kind of typical Ingle gym style, if you like, tricky, elusive, but with genuine power as well. And he first really came to prominence even before the Hatton rivalry, or during the Hatton rivalry, when he took his first world title shot at very short notice. I think it was 9 days, against Zab Judah, and gave a good account of himself, even won some of the early rounds before being outclassed and kind of maybe more so out-experienced, although that's not really a word, against Judah. But I think that gave him an added level of self-belief that he could hang at the top level, particularly if he had a full camp behind him. And Witter went on a bit of a tear after that, winning domestic titles, stopping people left, right and centre. Never quite nailed down that Hatton fight. But then when the opportunity came to win a world title, and again it was a vacant belt, against someone he was largely expected to beat in DeMarcus Corley, not the most exciting world title contest you'll ever see, but he got the job done and won a clear decision and went on a world title reign that never really dazzled, it's fair to say, but the highlight of it was a stoppage win over Vivian Harris in what was a pretty entertaining fight by the standards of the day. And Harris still had something left, former world champion in his own right, dangerous, and Witter got him out of there. And it just seemed like he was really pressing his claim as one of the best super lightweights in the world, and perhaps for that Hatton clash we all wanted to see, or most of us wanted to see. But then unfortunately lost his world title to Andre Kotelnik, and later on another challenge, this time against Devon Alexander. I think with Witter he'd waited around maybe a bit, or not by any fault of his own, but he'd been left waiting around for too long for his chance at top level, and his reign and his time and his peak, if you like, was rather short as a result, because he'd been plugging away at lower levels for so long. And I hope that doesn't happen with Galahad. But there are parallels. His first world title shot came against bitter rival Josh Warrington, of course. Wasn't beaten clearly in the same way Witter was against Judah. He lost a very close decision in a very boring fight, but one that a lot of people felt he should have got a nod in. So that one you could talk about for ages. But again, he went away, rebuilt, he won another final eliminator, having already won one to secure his chance at Warrington, and then won the belt clearly, as Witter had in a vacant title fight. This time, in his case, against an old rival in Jazza Dickens, someone he'd stopped previously, and this time just completely outworked, outclassed, and proved himself to be a different level. And that's no disrespect to Jazza, who's an excellent fighter in his own right, but Galahad on the night was just too good for him, and by some distance, I think it's fair to say. So now he stands on the cusp of a reign, hopefully a long one, and he wants unification fights as well. And this is going to be the kind of test to see just how far those similarities with Witter endure, because Witter didn't get long enough. He'd been plugging away for too long at the lower levels and kind of forced to wait his turn. has Galahad left his run too late? Let's hope not, for his sake. He starts off with a defence against Kiko Martinez. Should be relatively comfortable. Martinez did look incredibly unfortunate not to get the decision over Zelfa Barrett last time we saw him on UK shores. But he does tend to be beaten by the kind of top level fighters he faces. You know, former world champion of course, but has lost and been stopped in more recent times by fighters that you would hope that Galahad looks to emulate. So, and also style-wise, I think it suits him. Martinez is a bit of a kind of bull at the gate, comes forward, throws lots of shots, particularly winging hooks to head and body, but only seems to have kind of one gear and one direction as well. And I think in terms of the extra variety, the extra technical ability, and just being awkward, I think Galahad beats him in most departments. And while he might not be as big a puncher as Martinez, he can certainly hit with authority, and he can match the Spaniard for work rate. So I don't know if he'll get a stoppage, but I think should be a relatively comfortable victory for Galahad. And then thoughts will turn to what's next. You know, will he have that kind of eye-catching defence like Witter had against Vivian Harris, or will he look to go straight into unification fights? Featherweight, not sure how easy some of those are to make. Obviously Lee Wood is the WBA champion. He's also with Matchroom. There's an inbuilt narrative there in that Wood used to train at the Ingle gym. They've sparred. They know each other very well. There's already been a bit of back and forth on social media between the two. But I think for Galahad to truly be interested in that as a unification contest, and for it to be given the go-ahead as one as well, Wood would need to be elevated to WBA Super Champion, which, given that title holder Leo Santa Cruz has not fought in the division in so long, surely is only a matter of time. Or perhaps they'll do it in advance of Wood's mandated defence against Mick Conlan, which looks to be heading to New York in the spring. So that seems like a natural Matchroom in-house unification fight for two of the belts at featherweight, and then he can look further ahead to the likes of Gary Russell Jr. and so on. And I hope Galahad gets it done. I first met him in, I can't remember what year it was now, maybe 2011 or 12, in France, just in the suburbs of Paris. I was there for Boxing News to cover Danny McIntosh, an Ingle fighter back then, his bid for the European light heavyweight title against Thierry Carl in Levallois-Perret. Adam Booth was there as well at ringside. We were sitting next to each other actually. I think he was there. David Hay was doing some sparring locally, I think, at the time, and he chose to take in the boxing action while he was there. He wasn't working on the night. But yeah, tangent aside, I first met Barry in the changing room after the fights. Danny McIntosh had won against the odds, against the local favourite in France, delivered probably the best shot he ever threw in his career to win that belt. His reign was short, lost it to Edouard Gutneck. But it seemed the whole occasion seemed to have a real impact on Barry, who I think he was 5-0 at the time, something like that. Still very early in his career, but he told me then he vowed he would be the next great world champion and superstar from the Ingle gym. And it's been well noted that he first went into that facility after a chance meeting with Nassim Hamed, probably the most famous product of that gym, at the local mosque. And Hamed had apparently told him, if you want to be a world champion, you need to go and seek out Brendan Ingle, as I did, and he will get you there. And Brendan, latterly Dominic, have. But now it's time to take that next step and really put himself down as an all-time great, one of Sheffield's best, one of Yemen's best, if you want to talk about his heritage, or one of the best from that gym, up there with the likes of Nassim Hamed, Johnny Nelson, Harold Bomber Graham, of course, and Kell Brook in more recent years. And if he's to do that, these fights with the likes of Martinez need to be kept to a minimum. You know, if we're saying he's still very fresh, but he's not getting any younger, Barry, and if we're saying he needs to kind of solidify his legacy, Martinez isn't the level of fighter, all due respect to him, that's going to do it. So let's now see him push on. He's not the most fashionable champion. He hasn't got a big fan base, not always the most fan-friendly style either. But the talent is there, the hard work is there, very much like Witter. And as a kind of hardcore, long-time boxing fan, I'd really like to see that he gets the achievements, accomplishments that his work ethic, which is undeniable. Everyone says he's a gym rat, he never takes any time off, what that deserves. And I know there'll be people out there who criticise because quite a while ago now he had that drug ban, and the excuses he made for it, not the most palatable, I understand all that. But since then, he's barely put a foot wrong inside the ring or out, and there's no questioning his commitment and dedication to his craft. So I would hope now that he can use this world title win late in his career, but maybe that makes it easier for him to deal with and to accept the responsibility. I'd like to see him kind of capitalise on that, make the big money, get the big fights before it's too late. Witter should be a cautionary tale, if you like, and now's the time for Galahad to really push on. Also on the show, I should mention Terry Harper defending her world title against Alicia Baumgardner. Don't know much about the challenger, but it's good to see Harper back in the ring after her injury, and she'll want to push on as well to those big fights, perhaps with Katie Taylor, who's only got a limited number of contests left herself. Not the best show ever for Matchroom, it has to be said, and it's got a lot of criticism, which I understand, but I do like to watch Galahad, and I just want to see how he can deal with Martinez, a problem that's been posed to several world level operators over the years, and how he compares in his approach to some of the other people that have gone before him. Let me know what you think about Galahad, Harper, the fights at the weekend, anything I've talked about in the comments below. I'll respond to some of them. Meanwhile, I'll be back on Monday for reflections, looking back on the weekend's action, 4:30, and then the same time Thursday for the next Flexpectations. Really appreciate you watching as always, and I'll see you all soon. Cheers.